This is season number 19 of Bass Talk Live with Matt Pancraft. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Aftco, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries. Hit them with the hook, Jeffries.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. And we have a lot of bass fishing to talk about this morning, folks. A lot going on in the industry that went down this past weekend. We have Elite Series champions, NPFL champions, Toyota Series champions. We have heavy hitters going on. We have an Elite Series practice that's going on right now. And we have a guest from the most recent winner of the MLF Invitationals, one of the best guys to ever do it. And we're going to go way beyond just the win. The tournament win in itself is really cool. And I did not see this one coming from man himself, Kelly Jordon. A dominating win on Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma, a lake that's very near and dear to my heart, as well as a lot of anglers in the Oklahoma area. Obviously, with the MLF Invitational, the NPFL, and the Bassmaster Opens going there, Eufaula's getting a lot of coverage and recognition on a national level this year, something that we've known in Oklahoma is a really good tournament lake. I'd be interested to see what Kelly has to say about how he thought that fish. We're going to talk to Kelly about his win and then dive into the past. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going on, a lot of stuff that people are thinking are kind of new that he might have brought to the industry, that he's talked about it in the past, but you know, sometimes it's nice to go down memory lane. And so we'll do a little bit of old, a little bit of new, but first we got to get to the industry news in the, well, you know what? Let's bring Kelly in for the industry news, because Kelly's part of the industry. Kelly likes to talk about this stuff. Now, we got you down there. You have barely any cell phone coverage where you live, but you do have internet coverage. Thank you for jumping on, Kelly. I appreciate it. Great to have you back on BTL.
Well, hey, thanks, Matt. Great to be here, and always fun talking about fishing.
Yeah, I will say this. Massive tornado went 1.5 miles from my house in Shawnee, Oklahoma, on Wednesday night. Is it Wednesday or Thursday night? It's the end of last week. I didn't realize how bad it was. I ventured out this morning for a cup of joe. All the traffic lights are still out. Everyone's still working on it, and there's a lot of damage. I mean, it's really sad to see. I mean, you're talking stuff that's flattened and stuff that is almost flattened. Houses, businesses, car washes, gas stations, places to eat, residents. So as far as I don't think there was any casualties in Shawnee itself, some injuries, but I've been here about a year. Really sad to see that. Like I said, I didn't realize it was that close. I was in the scaredy hole the whole time, as Mark Jeffries would call it, or the tornado shelter. That was one of the things when I got the new house. Nice big tornado shelter. Guess what the first thing I saw when I opened up the tornado shelter was to get in it, Kelly, though?
A snake or a spider?
Black widow spider.
There you go.
So I'm trying to get in my tornado shelter, walking into a black widow spider. I was like, this is not a good 5 minutes for me. Long story short.
Entering tornado shelter by black widow bite.
Yes. Long story short, internet service has been in and out in this area all weekend long. Try to watch Hulu. Very, very hard to do. But we're going to give it a go today. So right now we're good to go. But I thought I'd bring you in. You are a guy who follows professional fishing. You've been in it a long time. You've seen all sorts of crazy stuff. Have you ever seen anything like what went down at the NPFL on Wright Patman this past week, KJ?
No, that's crazy. And I really feel for the individual that made that mistake. Cause I mean, I guess anybody could do it, but it's just part of being thorough. And, you know, I always try to, I don't know. I always try to screenshot a picture of mine so I have it on my phone in case I ever was checked as well. And, you know, if he would have gone that step, he probably would have realized he didn't have it, because apparently he thought he had it but didn't hit send at the end. And it's just a terrible story. I hate it for that guy, but hey, stuff like that happens. I mean, hey,
Yeah, it is rough.
move on.
Baron Adams. So they get to Wright Patman. He gets his fishing license. He thinks he gets his fishing. He ends up having a great tournament. Leads the thing, battling it out with Ryan Satterfield, wins it. From what I understand, I've made a couple calls about this. I need to call a couple people back after, but passes the polygraph. So yeah, I've got everything. Everything's on the up and up. But then when they ask him ask him to produce his fishing license, he's like, yeah, here it is. Can't find it. Filled everything out, forgot to hit the send button, or was maybe in a bad service area where it didn't actually go through. Like you said, take a screenshot. Then everything went dark on the NPFL website. The weigh-in was over. It said results will be shortly. I'm like 12 hours in. I didn't watch the weigh-in. I'm like, who won the thing? Who didn't win the thing? Obviously something's going on now. And then they come out with a press release yesterday. It says winner Baron Adams had his tournament weight disqualified for failing to produce a valid fishing license for tournament waters. The NPFL announced that Wright Patman winner Baron Adams has weight disqualified for the state of Texas. During the post-tournament verification process, it was discovered that Baron Adams had competed in the event without a valid fishing license, said Brad Fuller of the NPFL in reference to the NPFL Section 3. Basically, it says, hey, you got to have a fishing license. It was across the board, completely inadvertent. There was no intentional rules breaking, but he ended up zeroing. Fuller said Baron is a great person and a phenomenal angler, and we are proud to have him compete in the NPFL. But dude, $100,000 mistake. And as an angler who has gone through that, and you have too, everywhere you go, you've bought hundreds of different fishing licenses. Dude, that's easy to do, but also, it's hard to swallow that one.
Yeah, it's terrible. For this angler as well. I mean, that's just, I can't imagine something like that. Now, again, everybody out there listening, redundancy is key, stuff like that. If you're fishing in tournaments, just take a time to make sure that you have that kind of stuff. I know it sounds easy, armchair quarterback and that stuff, but it hurts. It's just, that's bad. I hate it for that guy. That is so tough because, like I said, I heard he passed the polygraph. In his mind, he had it, the technicality. But hey, it is the rules in the tournament, and it's law. And you just hate to see this kind of stuff. It's just devastating for this angler. But hey, move on. That's all you can do.
Yeah. We mentioned last year Trey Swindle had a similar incident. He was he was right up there, leading the tournament. He was in first or second in the Bassmaster Open on Chesapeake Bay. I mean, he watched the winning spot go down, but did not have the proper coverage on his insurance and had to sit there, couldn't get it, couldn't produce it, and his weight got DQ'd as well. And that was to go to the Bassmaster Classic this past year and fish in the Classic. So that stuff has anything like that ever happened to you in all your years of competing, Kelly?
No, it has not. I have heard of some instances in the past where people supposedly didn't have a fishing license in the past, but because I've heard those kind of things go on, so I really try really hard to have all that stuff, redundancy and covered and stuff like that. Not saying it could never happen to me either. That's just something that, hey man, everybody trips up every now and then, and that's just one of those things. And again, this angler passed the polygraph. He understood in his mind that he had it. It's just a terrible thing, but hey, that's tough, but move on, and that's all you can do. And I hate it for this individual.
It is kind of
the guy that ended up getting awarded the win. I'm sure he hates it too, because you don't want to win like that.
Yeah, right. Ryan Satterfield won with 50 pounds,
great win,
4 ounces. Yeah, but it kind of reminds me of just like crazy stuff that happens. Like I remember like a couple times in a couple year span, like Paul Elias came to the scales with 6 fish. Like I remember one time he had a sack, and I think it was on Kentucky Lake. I mean, he had a sack, and he comes up and he dumps them in the tank, and I'm covering it for Bass Zone, and there's like 6 big ones in there. And he takes his man's hat and just fires it against the trailer.
Now, there's a way you can make sure that doesn't happen too. And I've always been a sticker on that. I used to always weigh every one of my fish and ring them individually when I caught them. And that was my way of making sure that didn't happen, because I was very aware that could happen as well, especially in the heat of the battle. So, I developed a system for me to ensure that wouldn't happen, because this sport of professional fishing, all you can control is variables that you can control.
Yeah.
And so I try to do, I mean, it's just everybody's different, but for me personally, I try to make sure I control all those variables that I can do. That way, if something else crazy happens, nothing you can do. And it's just, hey, because I have seen these things happen. That's why I have systems that I do that ensures that you're never going to weigh in 6 fish if you only have 5 rings and you put a tag on every one of them before when you catch them. It's just I did that system because I had seen that exact thing you're talking about, Matt, happen, and I'm like, I don't want that to ever happen to me.
Now, it had been a minute since you had to use your system.
Yeah.
At Eufaula when you won, because I mean you're in contention here, but I mean, like I said, you're a founding member of the MLF, and then you fished the BPT, and then you jumped into this event. So it had been since you had fished a 5-fish cull, bring your fish, and it had been what, like 5 years?
Yes. Long
was
time.
that was that a little nerve-wracking? Did it take a minute
Yeah.
for you to get back in the saddle and make sure you were doing things properly?
100%. I didn't even know if my live wells worked sufficiently. I had to check those in practice, and
the cat wells always work, Kelly.
Yes, they do. But I mean, you never know, because I've never used them, and so they worked like a champ. I mean, my fish were kicking like crazy, and they did a great job keeping them very lively. But I had to borrow the non penetrating cull rings, just because that's really good for fish care. I borrowed some of those, and then actually Bubba Scales had some there that they gave a couple anglers that didn't have any. They just happened to have a couple extra packs. A few anglers got those. So that was I got the cull rings. We had the scale, and yeah, having 5, it was definitely different. And I caught myself making sure I had culled the right fish a couple times, because I wasn't really sure. It was a new kind of scale. So yeah, I mean, it was a little bit crazy, but hey, old habits are hard to, I did that forever and ever. So it wasn't that hard to get back in the saddle, is what I'm trying to say. But it was weird after not doing it for 5 years.
When did you get that feeling that you were going to be in the mix in this? We're talking about the
Texas.
MLF Invitational that went down last week on Eufaula Lake in Oklahoma. Really good weights for that tournament. Could have been better, could have been worse. There was a lot of diversity on how that went down and where it went down. You had wind, you had spawning fish, pre-spawn fish, but you had everything under there. But when did you know in your heart of hearts, holy cow, I'm in this sucker right here, I'm a player?
The last day of practice. I thought I had found some pretty good stuff, and then I found some really good stuff the final day of practice. And by really good stuff, I mean it just was perfect for everything that the fish were doing in my mind. There were some very obvious areas that were like this that I never even got to practice on, because there was always somebody there on them in practice. But I found some very similar things, just staging areas with rock and areas where there was no rock, shallow and leading into spawning areas. And I found it with Google Earth study, and with really paying close attention to my electronics and trying to be intuitive where I found stuff. And when I found what I found, I was like, holy cow, here we go. This is it. And I was pretty sure of that before I ever made a cast on.
Mainly cranking and dragging.
Yes. Bladed jig,
okay,
and square bill was my 1-2, and then I did drag a big worm a couple times. I caught one. I weighted one fish. I caught on a big worm on a Epic Baits wobblehead, swing jig, I guess, attachment. Yeah. But everything else came. I weighted 1 or 2 on my square bill, and then I weighted every other one on a bladed jig that a friend of mine makes for me.
I thought it was interesting reading some of it and then talking with you, like that you decided there was a little bit of strategy behind jumping into this one, as far as the history of the fishery, or the lack of history of the fishery, kind of what you'd known about it in the past. And then it seems like, I mean, you didn't just show up to fish. Like you mentioned, you did a lot of homework, the Google research, the areas of the lake, the patterns. It seems like this was a unique tournament that you decided to jump into.
Well, I fished there twice in the past, a long time ago. I did really well on both those events. Really enjoyed fishing there. And my impression from a long time ago was this lake has got them, and they are good ones. And if you can figure out how to catch them, I mean, I'm talking a lot of 3 and 4 and 5 pounders. I mean, it is just, it's a factory. I mean, you should see the crappie fishing out there. The whole time we were bass fishing last week, the crappie fishermen were everywhere. And every time you looked at the crappie boat, there's one after another slab crappies coming in the boat. It's just a super productive lake that doesn't get a whole lot of pressure. It's a gigantic lake. And so I knew I wanted to fish it. There was an opportunity to get on the waiting list. And so I was in there and I was just saying, man, I'd really love to fish it. It's a great tournament lake. And it's springtime. I was hoping we'd be able to be flipping bushes and stuff like that, which didn't happen. But either way, it's a fun lake. It's a great tournament lake.
You won a lot earlier in your career. You've had a little bit of a lull. I mean, there's no surprise to that. I mean, you haven't performed up to Kelly Jordon expectations, I'd say, for the last 5 years. Last win we were talking came in a cup win in 2014. But before that, I mean, you had like that early 2000s, like you were knocking off wins like every single year. It's been a minute in this style. Yeah. What did it feel like when you knew you were coming in with 22 plus on the final day? You had a little bit of gap to make out, but you were in it for the win. You knew there was a chance you were going to get your hands on that hardware.
You know, I felt like I left the door too wide open the first 2 days. You know, we're back to the 5 fish deal and trying to adjust to that. I didn't lean on them like I thought I should have the first couple of days. But hey, it worked out great. I won the tournament, so I guess that was the way it was supposed to be. So, but yeah, I knew I had to smoke them the last day, and I was very certain that I would, because I was going to spend all day in a couple areas that I knew had them, and I had it all to myself. And if I just picked it apart, I'd catch the right fish, which I did. Thank goodness. Still knew that Ron Nelson really had to struggle a little bit, and all day long I counted what he would have to tie me. So, you know, I just kept clicking up the board. And when I had 20 pounds, I was like, he has to have 14 something pounds. You know, that's not easy to do, even though he'd had 20 pounds the first 2 days. Then I get to 22 and a half pounds. I'm like, he's got to have almost 17 pounds. I have a real shot at this. This is going to go down. I mean, I knew I had a big shot, big time. I mean, I knew that I had a great opportunity, and I really had done everything I could. And, to pull in and win. And I heard people were like, man, I think you got this, man. And I couldn't believe it. And it was just, I mean, it wasn't like an out of body experience, but it's crazy because I had to wait so long to weigh in because they held us to the end because I was in the top 10 going into the final day. I had a lot of time to think about all this, how awesome it was. Seeing all the other anglers there, which I've known a bunch of them for a long, long time. It was kind of like a homecoming tournament too. It was really fun seeing old friends that I haven't seen in a while. And, just taking it all in was just, I got to soak it in for about an hour sitting on the bank before I weighed in. It was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Waiting to weigh in and everybody. And I came in 30 minutes early. That's a whole nother story, but it was blowing 100 miles an hour and I left.
Horrible.
I thought it would take me forever to get in. And I tell you what, my basket just ate that stuff up. I got in a hurry, which is one reason I had 22 pounds and not 20. I stopped because I still had an hour to fish. And I pulled up on a spot I'd practiced on, and in 5 minutes caught a 3.9 that called a 2.8, my smallest fish, and then caught a 4.13 that called the 3.9 I just caught. And I'm like, this is crazy. Put them in the live well and took off, and I get to weigh in still 30 minutes in advance, and there's about 30 other competitors that had the same idea that are fishing right out here around the check-in. And I'm looking, there's nowhere to get on the bank without pulling in 20 yards in front of somebody. So I idled around and looked. I just went ahead and checked in.
It's a borderline Timmy Horton move.
Not like that, but I would have liked to fish longer. But I mean, my batteries were dead. I mean, because I basically was on spot lock and trying to hold in just horrendous wind the whole day. I mean, I didn't even have any juice in my trolling motor left. I had to wear a stocking cap when I was fishing because it would blow my head off. It was that windy. Seriously, I tried to wear it. It blew it off. I said, okay, I got to wear a stocking cap. It's that windy. And winning that tournament and then I just can't tell you. It just man, it's a great blessing to win that tournament. Good Lord blessed me with that win is all I can say, and very humbling and very awesome. And it been so long, and to win again was just. I tell you what, you talk about charging the batteries up. Very exciting. I mean, I'm still on cloud nine.
So are we going to see, like, is this going to be like a new Kelly Jordon for the remainder of the year? Because I mean, you've got you showed me that before. I asked if you were in Redcrest and you were like, hey, look at this. You had a little ticket there. You're in Redcrest 2024 already. So you're back in the championship event. You have the majority of the season, heavy hitters on, is it what, BC break going on right now?
Bussy break.
Bussy break. And Caney. That's the big fish factory down there, isn't it? If they hit it, if they hit it right, going on right now. Obviously you'd like to be in that, but I mean, are you champing at the bit to get back on the water in BPT competition?
Yes. Well, so this whole year has just been, it's been crazy for me. I've had some issue or something the first 3 tournaments of the Bass Pro Tour this year. And I really had expectations going in and really had great practices and was on them. And the first event in Toho, I had some equipment issues and I didn't able to fish where I wanted to. I finally get to where I wanted to fish late the second day of competition. And Jeremy Lawyer sitting right on where I wanted to fish, and he won my group, and that felt great. And it was just one of those, hey, chalk this up, this stuff happens sometimes. Next event in Douglas, Tennessee, it snowed, so I'm from Texas, so that's my
You're out.
I had a really good practice, and I'm just like, come on, man. And then we go to Murray, and man, I thought I could catch 20 pounds thrown over my left shoulder, and I fished that way the first day with big swim baits, trying to get some big bites early because I had fun doing that. It was the Steve Kennedy trap that I got caught in, and was passing bedfish. So I said, hey, I'll come back and see you later today. And I would throw it a couple of spawners, one cast, see if they bite, because usually they'll sit down and lock up in the afternoon. So I was going to go fishing the last half of the day, and I caught 2 bass that weighed 4 pounds just because I saw easy went through in there, caught them one time, but I never had a bite on a swim bait. And then when I sit down to go sight fishing, we had rain and clouds. I think they pulsed the lake. They pulled it a little bit, like an inch or 2. And I know they did because back at my house, I looked at the dock. It was lower, even though the data showed it being higher, which it was not. All the fish left. Never seen that in my life. Every single bedfish that I had.
In a day. Or less than a day.
During the day. Yeah, the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. So when I went to go fish for them, they were all gone. Never even saw one. And I had hundreds. And
where do they go?
What's that?
Where do they go?
I have no idea. And so I'm just like mind blown. I don't even understand what has happened. Wesley Strader calls me as soon as we get off the water. He goes, hey, man, were you sight fishing today? I said, I was this afternoon. He said, were your fish gone? I said, every one of them. He said, mine too. What happened? I said, I have no idea. I've never seen that in my entire career. So I weighed in 2 bass for 4 pounds. And then I got the call that I got on the waiting list to go fish Eufaula a day off. And I was so mad. I said, heck yeah, put me in that thing. I can't wait to go fish and catch some fish. I am mad. This is crazy. So then I went the next day on Murray and I caught 21.9, which is a really good stringer. And I probably could have caught more than that, but I was looking for a big fish to overcome the deficit. So long story short, the first 3 events were crazy. And I went to Eufaula, and I mean, I think I've been fishing well. My record doesn't show it this year, and won that event. Yeah, I can't wait to fish the next event. I can't wait to fish more stuff. Charged about, we'll see, but I am loving it and enjoying this fishing as much as I ever have, and I can't wait to get out there.
Can we go back to this Murray thing? Because I would like to. You're one of the best sight fishermen out there. I also want to get into some of the stuff that you kind of brought to sight fishing, I feel, but I would like to go through the scenarios on what could have potentially happened. Cause that's happened at the Open on Toledo Bend. A lot of guys were like, dude, I had like 25 of them and they were all gone. So let's go through the scenario again. You see the fish that morning. Are they locked on? Are they rubbing? Are they individual? Do they look like catchable fish?
They were all individuals, but they had been there. I had actually found about a 9-pounder, which would have been big fish of the whole tournament if I'd caught it. And I fished for it the first day in the morning until midday. I had visited 2 or 3 times. So I'd had an off day. I was in Group B, so I didn't get to fish the first day.
Okay.
So I didn't know if it would still be there. And I didn't run straight to it early. But when I finally did, she was still there. But her male was gone. So maybe a local or an angler or somebody, or maybe the fish just left, had caught the fish. So she was there by herself.
Okay.
And I knew that would be problematic, but she was still there and she was kind of interested, and she was a giant. I mean, biggest fish I saw all week.
Yeah.
I did fish for her, and she was still there. She also, I didn't see her later in the day either when I went back to check on her. But we didn't. Usually, what'll happen when you have fish that are gone the next day, if you have thunderstorms the night before, they will be gone. Now, the males a lot of times will stay, but the females will all be gone. I mean, if you have bad thunderstorm lightning come through, it's not just storm, just lightning, they leave. That also kills the shad spawn usually the next morning if you have big storms. It's kind of
scientific. You think is that
What's
a scientific? What? Why is that a scientific thing? Are they scared of the thunder? I've heard of that before, but do you have any idea why?
They I guess they go to the sanctuary, deeper water. But I mean, if you have thunderstorms, the females will be gone.
That's weird. Every time over the last 3 decades, you've noticed that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just if that happens, I mean, we saw that at the Bass Pro Tour that we had on Lake Fork that Ott Defo won. The final was on Lake Athens. I don't know if you watched that, but everybody was like,
Cranking.
"Why is the fishing so tough?" Well, that's because we had thunderstorms the night before, and all those easy ones that were up on the bank had all backed out to the outside edge of the eelgrass, and that's where. And I knew that, but I live here. I'm like, guys, just back out just a little bit and throw a swim bait down the outside edge. And they're up there shallow, and they were all scratching their head, going, "Where did they go? They're not here." But that's what happened. So that does happen. If you have a thunderstorm come through the night before, your females will be gone. They'll start showing back up, but usually it takes at least a day or two for them to come back in well. We did not have that at Murray. We had a cloudy, misty, kind of sprinkly, rainy day.
Should have been
perfect swim bait conditions. I thought the fish were there. I had seen several in the morning, and they were, just kind of roaming like they do in the morning, and then the afternoon. Not just a couple of them, not most of them, every one of them that I had I ran all over the lake to different pockets that had fish on this. I never even saw one.
Wow.
In the last period, not one. And Wesley Schrader called me. Same thing happened to him. And I don't know. I think everybody did their damage early, and I have never seen that. And it had to be. They pulsed the water. They did. They pulled it just a hair. And at the same time, I don't know why that mattered that much, but it did. Whatever. Hey, the mystery continues. That's fishing.
You mentioned that. You also mentioned that you got Steve Kennedy a little bit, which I assume is throwing a big bait and awesome 5-pounders, chasing it back in and then not being able to catch it. But I do remember from back in the day, and I still, the reason I will remember this is I was going through an old box of stuff. I cleaned out a storage unit, and in the bottom of one of the boxes, I had 2 mission fish, and they were old mission fish from like 2007 maybe. And the only reason I have them is because of Kelly Jordon, because of you. And I remember you talking about using big swim bait. Now, this is 15 years ago, big swim baits to either catch, agitate, get bedding bass active. And if I remember right, it's because that mission fish has the lead in the belly. It looks like it's acted down, but is that something you still do? And were you the first guy to throw that you know of on tour to throw those big swim baits into beds and then do the bait and switch? That's how you did it, right?
Yes, and I've also caught some really, really big ones actually on the mission fish. Santee Cooper, where they're going this week. I caught back-to-back. Bink DeSaro was actually in the same cove, and I had a 7-inch mission fish, and they wouldn't really eat it. I asked him if he had the 9-inch mission fish. He said he did, so I trundled over to his boat and he gave it to me. And I went back and I caught back-to-back 7.5 and a 9.14 back-to-back on that. And I'm like, thanks, Bink. Dear departed Bink, a dear friend that passed away recently, and it's a terrible thing, but dear friend. I'll never forget that because he helped me out on that, and I'll never forget. I said, thanks, Bink, and he goes, you're welcome, Kelly. I mean, kind of like, and he had respected my side of the cove. He was doing the same thing across, and that's respect and friends and good sportsmanship all the way around. But I'll never forget that. It's a great bait. I was not the first. The person who actually showed me that was Brett Height.
No way.
Brett Height showed that to me. So years ago, this is a long time ago. I mean, I don't even know if you were born then, Matt, but
I'm sure I was.
Yeah, you probably were. Probably 20 years ago, maybe not, maybe close to that. So we had in between tournaments, and we had a gap, and it was late March, and we had a week to kill. Maybe we were on Toledo Bend and we were going somewhere else. I can't remember, but everybody said, "Hey, let's go to Lake Fork and spend the week." I said, "Sure, come down. I'll be there. I'll show you where to fish. We'll go around." They all stayed there. Bink was there. Brett High, several other anglers. Anyway, Brett and I fished one day, and we're sight fishing, and we got caught all these bass on the beds, a lot of good ones, and there was one bass that was really interested but wouldn't leave the bed, and I had thrown on a couple times, and I don't know if Brett was reluctant to show me or not, but he said, "Hey, KJ, I got a trick I'm going to show you." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." So he pulls out this, huge mission fish swim bait that looks like a brim kind of. It's got the brim coloration. And I was kind of thinking he didn't know what he was doing. I was like, "What are you doing, man?" He said, "Watch this." And I'll never forget. He pitched that. We had already been fishing for this fish for 10 minutes, totally uninterested. You could drag your bait like over its nose and it wouldn't even move. One of those fish.
Mm-hmm.
Threw that mission fish in there, pulled that in the bed, and that fish lit up, turned around, and smoked that bait immediately. Total. I was like, "Oh my gosh." Never had seen anything like that. So if they're on the beds, and there's other baits that will do that as well, but nothing. The mission fish to me is the king daddy of them all. But if I am sight fishing at all, especially in a tournament, those are in my boat. Period. Always are. Got to have them.
Now, the other one that I think is always in your boat, I don't want to give anything. Well, there's cameras and everything. I'm not giving anything away. Can I tell the other one that I think is always in your boat that you've changed Mark Jeffrey's life when you showed him this and he still refuses the only dang thing he'll ever throw on a bedfish? Or do you want to just move on past that? I don't know if you still have any secret. It's that little Lake Fork craw that's like 3 inches big, and it's basically all hook and a little bitty craw. I think couple different companies have like a very similar mold now, but it was the original one that you started was like a big hook, little bitty Lake Fork craw, and you'd either have a natural color or white, right? I mean, that was your other go-to.
I never threw a white one, but natural colors. If I want to be able to see it, I'd use one that was kind of like the brown with the orange belly craw.
Okay.
You can see orange.
But that was it, right? What was it called? Yeah. Not the ring craw or something?
That was called the Lake Fork craw.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
little bitty thing.
There's a couple companies that make basically the same thing. It's a very small craw, and I figured out that you could put a 6/0 hook in that thing.
Yeah, I remember. It's all hook.
It's all hook. Yeah, it actually makes the crawfish kind of sit up like the hook is a ring, and it makes the crawfish sit up just like a crawfish. So it looks like the crawfish sitting on the bed, fighting with his pinchers up. But it's a little bitty craw, and there's a couple reasons. We can't hook a fish outside the mouth.
Yep.
So it's also a small, very natural bait. There's sometimes bigger baits are better, sometimes small ones do. But with that one, it's all hook. It's a little bitty bait, and it's a lot easier for the fish, especially when sometimes they'll pick a bait up and move it off. It's harder for them to do that and not have the hook than say if you had a 5-inch Cinco Texas rigged in there, something like that. So there's a bunch of reasons, but it's deadly. I have won a lot of money and I've won a couple sight fishing tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper's one of them that I won on that bait.
Okay. I do have to mention while we're talking about sight fishing and Lake Murray, like I said, the BPT was there. Drew Benton gets his second Elite Series win, just wrapped up this past weekend. What do you have? 87 pounds. Over,
he weighed 26 something, biggest stringer of the whole tournament.
26.7 on the final day. Mixed it up between sight fishing, some shad spawn fish. He caught a big one on a drop shot. He caught a big one on a crankbait, but primarily sight fishing. Good dude. I don't know him as well as I probably should, but he's always been super nice to me. Last one he won was down in your neck of the woods. Yeah, Lake Travis there.
It's in the same area, and I was happy that he figured out those fish had kind of repositioned during the event, and he figured them out. They kind of left me and went to where he was fishing, and I didn't adjust. He did, and he won the event. So I was happy. I got to see that go down.
Was he spooning them there?
Spooning topwater. He was fishing a marina.
Yeah.
They had kind of been in the back of this one really good creek, and they were moving out. Typically, it's the end of the spawn. They were moving that way, and he killed them on a topwater.
Yeah.
Early, and he caught some spooning. I caught some spooning in the docks as well. But anyway, he adjusted and he took the W in that one, and it was cool to see because, I did well in that tournament. But he won, and he's a really nice guy. Excited, he's fun to watch fishing, and enthusiastic about fishing, and just a really nice guy as far as I know.
Hunter Shryock, his best Elite Series finish, 85.7. If you guys haven't been to Bassmaster and seen the 7-pounder that he had to crochet or macrame, whatever that is, where it's like you're in and out. Anyway, he got it in this dot cable on a spinning rod, a 7-pounder, and then he's on his belly, and he had to go in and out of the pilings with his rod on his belly like 3 times, and then he lands the 7. And he's a pretty excitable guy too, so there was some deep caveman bellows following that. And then Koya Fujita Ish pointed out that the man has 5 live scope transducers on his boat. And then he finished in the top 5 in an event on the fuzzy dice, which is a square piece of plastic with like jig rubber coming out of it that you wacky rig. And he finished 3rd in this one, hover strolling. You know anything about this guy, Kelly? I mean, I know there's a bunch of different trails and a bunch of stuff. So this dude is maybe 80 pounds soaking wet. The first time I really heard about him was when he fished the opens last year on Oneida. And there was this dude out on the shoals who just did like figure 8s and donuts the whole day. And we were all like, what the hell's going on with this dude? And he was scoping 4-pound smallmouth 120 feet out on 3-pound test and spending 10 to 15 minutes landing them because there were 100 guys out on the shoals. He had like 20 plus on the first day. At the next event, I was next to the hot dog stand and Sego was there. And I was like, dude, I got to meet this dude. So, through the translator, I said, hey, good job, dude. And then you got to ask Brett Hyde about him. Brett gets in the boat with him and he's like, Cody Meyer, sorry, not Brett. Cody Meyer gets in the boat and he's talking to us and he's like, yeah, I'm out here shooting with this guy. He's like, I don't like fishing with him. He makes me look like a chump. And we're like, what? And he's like, dude, he's like, swear to God. He's like, if it's a finesse bite, it's like 5-1. And then he called that day and they were on Onondaga and he's like, yeah, I caught 3. Fujita caught like 19. And so now he's doing the same thing on the Elite Series. He's in the top. I think he's leading Rookie of the Year. Knows 0 English, uses all these bizarre baits and catches the heck out of them. He's like changing the sport as we go. Really, really interesting case study on what's going to end up happening here.
That's pretty cool.
Nick is on here saying he's using a jackal drift crab and a jackal drift minnow hover strolling them in this event.
Well, hey, we all learn something every day. We do. And that's pretty awesome to, hey, that stuff comes along and you get anglers that have their, a little technique that they have figured out or something that they're very, very good at and can capitalize on that. It's fun to watch when stuff like that happens.
Yeah. And Kenta was doing some weird stuff too. And he had a good bite.
That's awesome.
Are you into the new stuff or are you like tried and true now? Are you willing to go out with some of the bizarre free rigs, hover strolling, all this stuff? Or are you like, dude, I'm throwing my lucky craft crankbait, my frickin' bladed jig and my worm and y'all can have the rest of that?
So I finally got active target, Lowrance active target last year. And the first time I put it in my boat, I mean, I just, hard-headed old school, I'm not doing that. And anyway, got my butt kicked up in between my shoulder blades for so long. I gotta just move over to the dark side over here and try this. And the first time I had it, I was like, my goodness, this is unbelievable. Now I have used sonar my entire life, Lake Fork, guiding on that for so many years. That was my eyes underwater, was my graphs back then. I could actually tell you back in the day how much a bass weighed before we caught him on my graphs. Can't do that anymore. They've changed how I've talked to the technicians a lot and the engineers, and that was analog technology. And believe it or not, I could tell you how Lake Fork, how much a bass weighed within a pound. I'm serious. It was unbelievable. Can't really do that now, but long story short, very comfortable with electronics. I've had the Humminbird 360. That is as cool, cool as you can get. But the forward-facing sonar is just a whole different world than that as well. And I have been using that. I'm in my 2nd year of using that. I use it a lot. It is very important. I used it at Eufaula. Mm-hmm. I didn't really see many fish, except for 3 giant catfish I caught in practice on a jerk bait back to back to back. So I quit doing that, by the way. That wasn't very fun. But, you see your lines. You can see I was seeing the rock lines, and I was seeing where the isolated timber was. It's just such a helpful tool that, even this old dog uses it, and it is extremely beneficial to my fishing.
Oh, we're gonna take our first break of the show, but when we come back, I kind of teed you up there with the unique techniques, because if my memory serves me right, and it's been a minute since you've told the genesis of this, there was an ultimate match fishing event back in the day where a guide from Texas was doing some weird stuff with a spoon that everybody thought before was what you trolled for pike, a daredevil, and this dude was stroking it off of the bottom and completely exposed a brand new technique where everyone in the fishing industry was going, they eat a chunk of metal? Like, what the heck is going on here? And that was you.
Yep.
So we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to hear that story, because it's the same thing that's happening now with some of these new techniques. 100%. It was just earlier. It was with an earlier version of the electronics that you talked about. It was with an earlier version of the bait. It's BTL on a Monday, April 24th, talking with MLF Invitational champ Kelly Jordon. We're going to talk heavy metal when we come back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top on Strike King.
So I'm a big guy, a lunker, a 2 sandwich eating kind of man. And on behalf of all of those bigger, I gotta say it once and for all, it's bad enough that the fish look smaller in our hands. The last thing we should have to worry about is getting quality outdoor clothing that fits. AVCO, any fish, any water.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
All right, welcome back. BTL on a Monday, talking with Kelly Jordon. New techniques, old techniques that at one point were new, that are now coming back around. And anything that we talk about here, make sure you guys can also go to omniafishing.com/BTL. You can sign up to be a premium member there. Check out, I actually put in my fishing report from Toledo Bend, which I was shockingly close to a very good finish there. If I had gone 500 yards to the right, it would have been a different story than 500 yards to the left there. But you can use that code. I think you get like either 10 or 15% off your first purchase with Omnia there. So omniafishing.com/BTL Bass Talk Live. Back to Kelly Jordon. All right, exactly what's going on now with the free rig, with the fuzzy dice, with the heavy poop or whatever you want to call it, the heavy stuff. That's exactly what was happening in the early 2000s when you were using electronics and this crazy spoon that no one had heard of that you'd had under your belt, and you blew it out on Joe Thomas's ultimate match fishing. That's how the story goes, right, KJ?
That's how it went down.
Okay, tell it, because I would like to hear it. I don't think I've ever heard the actual story on how you introduced. I'm sure there are other people using it, but on how you exposed the big spoon to the bass fishing masses.
Yes. So we always use spoons a lot in the wintertime on Lake Fork. That's one of the great things that that helped my fishing and being a successful tournament angler is the different kind of fishing that you have on Lake Fork, from shallow fishing, fishing timber, fishing grass, which it doesn't really have anymore, but it used to have awesome hydrilla. And then a lot of really good defined deep structure, and the fish live deep in that lake for most of the year. So very familiar, very versed at electronics and spooning and other, deep water techniques. I remember the first drop shot I saw ever was Alton Jones came to fish with us in the summer, and he dropped that, and he showed me this whole deal. I thought it was crazy, but he called it the hover rig. This is before anybody even really called it a drop shot. This was forever ago, because one thing about Alton Jones is he was always like on the lead of the finesse stuff, believe it or not. I mean, it's just crazy. He used to always be one of the first guys to pull out a spin around 8-pound line and throw gets it with the lead head inside. Anyway, that's just history. This is a long time ago. But the big spoon. So my dear friend Joe Spates is always tinkering. He's a lure manufacturer there in Lake Fork. Always had a store, made his jigs and made his spoons and all this kind of stuff. Well, he had gone up north and fished for pike or something and had seen these huge spoons, like the big Daredevil, said these were heavier, brass centered in the heavy. And he said, man, I wonder if the bass on Lake Fork will bite that. Well, he brought them back, kind of refined what it was, and got to catching them. And he would tell me, hey, man, I got this big spoon that catches them. And he showed it to me. And I had the same reaction most everybody else did. Man, that's crazy. There's no way that's as big as my hand. They're not going to bite that. He said, oh, yeah, get out there, give it a shot. So I did. One day we had a boat owners tournament out there, and had to take some of the guys on one of the days in the final for a little shootout. And it was my first time to use the spoon, the big one. And he said, yeah, go out there and just get on your stuff and throw it out there and see what happens. So I did that. I went to a roadbed, had a big school of fish on it, and we had thrown a couple other baits, big deep diving crankbaits, caught a couple. And I said, I'm just going to throw the spoon out there. Man, I caught one every cast for 30 minutes, 4 to 7.5 pounders, every cast. And I caught them pretty regular on the big crank, but this is just a whole different world. And I was mind blown. So I said, thanks, Joe. I'm going to put this in my box over here, and I'm not going to say anything. And I had learned, I was a little bit longer in my fishing career at that time, so I had learned that you don't say too much when you figure something out. Kind of try to be a little bit more tight-lipped about it. So it was my secret for a while. There was an event on Kentucky Lake the year or two before the Ultimate Match Fishing when I finally let that cat out of the bag. And I thought was certain I was going to win that event. I caught 18 or 19 pounds the first day in 5 casts.
On the spoon?
Yes. And I came in because I caught them all in 25 feet of water, and they were all floating like buoys in my live well, and I didn't want them to die. So I had called Trip Weldon and said, hey, is anybody up here that can fizz these fish for me? Because I hadn't brought a needle from Lake Fork. So I actually came in, and they came out and fizzed them for me and got them all right. And I just pretty much sat around and waited for weigh-in because I was done. And for whatever reason, they got off the spoon in the rest of the event. I didn't catch them on anymore. And that does happen. The spoon is weird. They're either on it or they aren't. That's one thing about the spoon. You can find out in a couple casts. If they are, look out. If they're not, it's not really the deals. But long story short, I didn't win that tournament. I did well. I think at top 10 or something. But John Murray was close to me where I was fishing that first day. And he saw me catch those in 5 casts and back off. He asked me what I was throwing. And he reminds me of this all the time. It's pretty funny. He says, what were you throwing? I said, a spoon. He said, let me see it. And I told him no. I wouldn't show it to him.
Really?
And he reminds me of that all the time. He said, remember that? You wouldn't show me your bait. And I said, well, hey. So when we get to the Ultimate Match Fishing, on Kentucky Lake again, I had found a huge school of fish, and I hadn't been able to catch them on anything. I tried a Carolina rig, I tried a crankbait, I tried a.
And this is on TV.
Yes, well, this is in practice. You got to practice for this. I found
Okay.
this fish. I had thrown everything: football jig, Carolina rig, deep crankbait, preacher jig. I think I even threw a drop shot on them. I threw everything, and they were in about 19 to 25 feet of water. And I was about to leave because I thought they must have been white bass or something. So I said, you know what? I'm going to throw the spoon on them. And so I got the spoon out, fired it out there. First cast, whop, hooked one. And it was fighting really hard. I said, man, this must be a striper or a hybrid or something. And it comes up and jumps. It's like a 5-pounder. And I said, my goodness. So I got it off. I threw back out there, hooked another one, get it to the boat. And as I get it to the boat, it's another 4 or 5-pounder. There's about 30 with it that followed up to my boat. And I said, my goodness, this is going to be something else. So anyway, with mixed emotions, I still tried to catch them on other baits and other places. I really didn't want to show that on TV. But finally I said, you know what? It's worth it if you win. And I didn't win. I came in second because I had a fish die that cost me a 1/4 pound penalty, and ended up losing by 0.06 pounds, which is less than 1 ounce to Boyd Duckett, and he won. So I'm still mad about that. But
Oh wait, when you exposed that spoon, you were in the boat with Boyd?
yeah, well, that week I had. So here's the guys that I had to compete against. First one was Anthony Gagliardi.
Okay. We're talking what, 2000? What year are we talking about here?
Maybe 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. I don't know.
Okay. Well,
Anyway.
I think Boyd won in 07. So would it have been after he won the Classic? I would probably assume that he'd be on Ultimate Match because he was just at Opens.
Yeah,
or
right.
Tour guys.
It was
07, 08. Okay.
I don't know. I don't have the belt. Boyd Duckett does.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Just put a little context to it.
Yeah, I had to fish against Anthony Gagliardi.
Strong.
And I caught him mostly cranking on that, and I think I pulled the spoon out, but I was trying not to if I didn't have to. And then Larry Nixon.
Strong.
And I was able to Larry was on him. I finally had to go to my juice, and I just whacked him. And I'll never forget, Larry Nixon looked at me and said, golly, in his Arkansas way, he says that, which is very awesome because Larry Nixon is the general. He is the man and a hero of mine, always has been. And to see him say that, and he just stood there like, I've never seen that. That is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. I would never have thrown that. And then, so I had to beat him. Then my next round, and short sidebar on that, he called me the next year. He had an FLW Tour event on Kentucky Lake, and he came in the top 3 or 4 or 5. And he called me and said, "Man, thanks again for showing me how to throw that big spoon, because that's what I caught all my fish with." But then the final was Boyd Duckett, and I was trying not to go there because they can turn around and fish on your stuff,
right.
And I really wasn't worried about them catching them, but you don't ever know. I tried not to go to this one school of fish that had these big ones. I finally went at the end of the second period, and I caught all my fish in 6 casts. I lost one and caught 5, and they weighed 22 pounds or something like that. And it was crazy. And then I just kind of coasted to third, and then they threw a wrinkle in. There was a happy hour where you could go anywhere you wanted in your own boat.
Oh, no.
In the end, so Boyd pulled up on the famous horseshoe right there by the bridge, and I did too, but I was down from him, and I saw him catching all big ones. I said, oh, no, because he had basically nothing until the happy hour. I mean, he had like maybe 10 pounds. I have 22. And I said, I got to go back to my fish. So I run back to my fish. And I never upgraded. I caught a 3-pounder every cast the whole time I was there. A different size of fish moved in, but it still doesn't matter. But in all that process, I had one die that had been hooked in the tongue with the spoon, and that was the difference in that win. It's a great shoot. I mean, he killed him. I killed him.
$50,000 though, wasn't it?
Yeah, and a belt.
Yeah.
And he jokes now. Everybody comes in. They don't want to look at his belt. They want, because I gave him the spoon that day, because that was the deal. You get the winning bait, and you get the other guy's bait if you win. And on that note, I have one with Larry Nixon. I made Larry Nixon sign my spoon. I beat him on that day, and I have it on over here on one of my trophies. It's awesome.
That's a little savage.
Yeah. But so he has mine.
You had Larry Nixon side the bait you beat him on with?
Oh yeah.
That's cold-blooded, KJ. I've never heard of such a thing.
It's history, man. I mean, he's like one of my heroes. I mean, that's like the great. He'd gladly sign that thing. I think I had to give him one too. I think that was the what we did.
Okay.
As well, I remember, but Boyd jokingly says they come in. He said they don't want to see the belt; they want to see the spoon that I gave him. So anyway, that was the start of something special. And everybody that throws a big spoon, that's when that.
So how long did it take for that? So you do it. It's a tape to air deal. It's not live. There is no such thing as live. There's not even a live blog right now. You can keep stuff under your hat at this point in time. Like Bass Zone was like one of the first that was covering every tournament with top 10 patterns and on the water and stuff. And, you'd have guys that were like, hey, no, keep this on. Now you can't do it you guys have 700 hours of live coverage in every single event. How long did it take after that aired before? Was there just an inundation of guys trying to get this? Did you go out on Lake Fork and you saw everybody throwing it and you were like, my God, what have I done?
Yeah, pretty much. And Joe Spates, dear friend forever. And he's a super dear friend now because he made for several years, he made them as fast as he could make them. His business was great. Every time I see him, he's just smiling about it and just loving it and love it for him because he's just a small-time little businessman with a little shop just trying to make a living. And it really helped him out. He was able to sell his product because he makes great products. So, but
is he still making them?
No, he's retired now.
Okay.
He sold the tackle factory. But he's probably still tinkering around. I'm sure he is. I don't think you can ever stop tinkering with lures when you're a lure maker like that. But no, everybody else came out with one. We knew it was coming. I talked with Joe at the start. We tried to figure out maybe a way where we could make them faster because I knew there was going to be a big bump, but I didn't know it was going to be as big a bump as there was. Strike King was the first one to enter the market because they have a lot of people like Crispin Pally is right there on
the sexy spoon.
He knew about it. I had showed him. I had given him one and Sam Lashley, and they had the first one to come out with the big spoon that was mass produced. So good for them. It was they're still selling them like crazy.
Yeah. And then Lake Fork had one that a lot of people used. I remember
I made one as well, but I didn't ever really promote that because Joe was my friend, and it was I was like a soft plastic guy, and I'm just super loyal to guys like that. And I throw the Big Joe spoon. That's what I throw.
It's like Amart with the Robo Worm. They started with him. He didn't care what it was. He was throwing the Robo Worm.
Yep, the same.
And then Nichols took it the whole next level then by doing the Magnum spoon, which I still can't wrap my head around, but that's like 3 times as big as Joe's spoon, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and Ben Parker did. I think he is the one that first had that, and then everybody else kind of ran with that. And Ben Parker lived there on Kentucky Lake as well. So he, had a fantastic testing ground. Hey, I don't know why I didn't think, hey, let's try an even bigger one.
The thing looks like have you ever caught him on that big one? Have you ever even tried to throw it?
Yes, I've thrown it. There's times when it's the deal as well. It's crazy.
It's bigger than this St. Jude tumbler.
Yeah. And you can catch a bass that's shorter than that spoon on that spoon. They'll hit that. It's just makes you wonder sometimes these fish that we're chasing when I shake my head when people say the bass outsmarted them today because there's really nobody home. You can react those bass, they will bite. But the thing is, they are very tricky to trick, if that makes sense. So you figure out what they want. They have no fear. They'll hit whatever. It's pretty awesome, actually. That's why they're such great game fish.
How do you think it's different now? You see some dude throw a fuzzy dice or something weird or a free rig as opposed to back then, like, is it possible to have any secrets anymore? Are there guys with stuff in their back pocket, or is that a thing of the past now?
I think there probably still is, but as soon as they win a tournament on it, it'll be out. You can't really hide much nowadays. Like I said, I tried to hide that spoon. I did for a couple of years, but it wasn't ever really right, except for a time or two. I've seen this, throughout my career. Their stuff comes along. You think about these new land, sport shocking new baits that come out. So the spoon was one of them. Okay. Well, another one that's a real low hanging fruit. Okay. It's the chatterbait. When I first saw that, I never will forget. I was at a show. I don't know if it was a fishing show or the classic. I don't know, but none other than Brian Thrift was showing me in this little tank with a little stick with a piece of string. And I remember thinking, that is the stupidest looking thing I've ever seen in my life. They're not going to bite that. And boy, was I wrong. I mean, it just shows you. And I when you're skeptical of things, I would just encourage everybody, no matter how dumb you think something looks, it is worth your while to try the latest and greatest, because who knows what the next thing is going to be like that. I mean, look at swim baits, Alabama rigs, for crying out loud. Maybe these fuzzy dice are going to be the next thing, but it's coming. There is something that's going to come, and it happens every 5 or 10 years or so. There's something that comes out that just revolutionizes our sport a little bit. And, the chatterbait is the latest in Alabama. I mean, think about this. All these giant fish they're catching on Lake Okeechobee in Texas. I mean, what's going to be next?
William Jackson believes it's the Alabama hubcap, which is 5 of those spoons on an A-rig.
It's got a blown out 454 V8 powering it from your boat too, right? Probably something like that with the vibrations through the floor. I don't know.
Hey, we've talked a lot, KJ, about electronics, about off the wall patterns. We've talked a lot about Kentucky Lake. I was going to do this last segment solo. I wanted to talk about what went down in the Toyota series on Kentucky Lake this past week. You want to stick around and dive into this one with me?
Sure. I'd love to hear how it went down.
All right. BTL on a Monday with Kelly Jordon. We'll be back right after this. Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronics setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Look at that beast right there.
The great thing about the new Sensation soft plastics from Big Bite Baits, heavily scented, super soft, buoyant, comes in 7 great new shapes. I've got a couple of them of my signature series, the cliffhanger worm and the ramtail craw. Great for a flipping jig, football jig, swim jig, all that. Several other great shapes. Really excited about it. We've worked over the last year, catches fish all over the country, and I think it's going to catch fish for people everywhere you try it.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
I'm the kind of guy that never leaves a house without a pocket knife, and Gamakatsu's come out with the EDC series of knives. EDC stands for everyday carry, so whether you're on the water or off, you can always have it with you. The best thing about it to me is that assisted open feature. With this D2 blade, you've got it right here at your fingertips, so if you can't find your scissors, you need to cut a knot, you need to cut your braid, you've always got it. Make sure you check it out. Never leave home without your Gamakatsu EDC knife.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
Having confidence in your tackle while on the water is one of the main things to success, in my opinion. In the last couple of years with Denali, I've had just that. From anything from spinning rods, casting rods, tungsten products, even now to casting and spinning reels, I have the confidence to go out there and get the job done and know that all my equipment is going to handle it and do it just the way I want it. The thing about Denali is you've got great quality products at a great price point, so make sure you check them out.
All right, welcome back, BTL, on a Monday. Really enjoyed the conversation with Kelly Jordon. It's amazing how cyclical this sport is. I guess you could say the same thing about like Jinko jeans or corduroy or any fashion trend or anything, but it's the more things change, the more they say the same. Isn't that what the old timers say, KJ?
That's what they say.
Would you agree with that statement?
Your stuff does definitely come back in. You know, I'm certain. I mean, look at square bills, for crying out loud. I mean, that was a staple a long, long time ago, and they kind of disappeared, and then they came back with a vengeance. I mean, that's just one example. Yeah. And
same with blades, spinner baits. Seems like spinner baits 100%. Are making a big comeback now. There's all sorts of top 10s that you got spinner baits on, and for a while there, I feel like for 5-10 years, the only time you'd see a spinner bait was if it was someone burning for smallmouth on the Great Lakes or St. Lawrence River or Lake St. Clair.
100%.
And then Jason Christie was like, watch this. and then it came. And then it came back.
Related to Jimmy Houston some way or somehow, you know, it's got to be.
Yeah. Dude, you ever watched him throw it? The accuracy and confidence with which that man casts a spinnerbait is frightening.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome to watch. No doubt.
Jimmy was the spinnerbait guy back in the day, wasn't it? Like if there was a spinnerbait bite, Jimmy would be in the top 10 on it.
Yeah, I think he was born with a spinnerbait in his hand. I'm pretty sure about that. I don't know. But yeah, he is definitely, I mean, if there is a godfather of the spinnerbait, it is Jimmy Houston.
Oklahoma, if you had to pick a state that is best for throwing best guys, spinnerbait guys, would you pick Oklahoma as the number one spinnerbait state?
Well, since you just said the best guys, there's two of them we just mentioned.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. As a whole, like if you were to put a technique to each state, like is there a state with absolutely. A group of guys that throws a spinnerbait better than Oklahoma guys?
Well, you think about Oklahoma, it's got lots of clear water, but it's got lots of rocks, lots of flooded cover, lots of stumps, a lot of bushes, a lot of current, a lot of muddy water. You name it, all the spinnerbait factors that come in, it's wall to wall, and great fishing. Good sized fish that smoke a spinnerbait in the right conditions, and you have a lot of fluctuations with your river systems and the rain and the droughts. It's just I guess that's just the perfect spinnerbait state. Yeah,
Texas rig for Texas. Well, obviously it's Texas rig, but let's say a worm. Like if you had to pick a state, is there a state as a whole, the anglers in Texas, is there a state that throws a big worm better than the state of Texas?
Maybe Florida. Maybe, but yes, that's big 10-inch worm, man. That's just a staple in the state of Texas for sure.
I'd have to go Cinco stick worm in Florida, different than a big worm.
That's
totally
true,
different technique.
I think the big worms started in Florida,
like the ribbon tails and all that started in Florida.
What's that?
Like the big ribbon tails and all that started in Florida.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I believe so. This is like back in the Doug Hannon days. Remember, he used to make that big snake. He made all.
Oh yeah, and then Tennessee would obviously have to be a crankbait.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right. The innovation of the crankbait and from deep to shallow definitely goes to the Tennessee boys.
Alabama would have to be a swim jig, wouldn't it?
That's a pretty good call. Yes, they. Yeah, I mean that's always a player in Alabama. For anywhere you go, pretty much.
Would you put, if you had to pick a state with as a whole? We're just talking group. We're talking local all the way up to the top of the food chain. Would you put Alabama guys with the swim jig over Carolina guys with a swim jig, or is that how would you stack up Carolina swim jiggers versus Alabama swim jig guys?
When I think of Carolina guys, I think more of the swim jigs / dock skipping, precision casting, picking apart, jump fishing.
Yep.
That is the Carolina. I mean, you look at the guys here, they are just tacticians with that stuff. I mean, it's unbelievable. In Alabama's more straightforward down the shoreline grass kind of deal for them,
Hey, we're gonna go down this stretch of water willow and just shake the hell out of a swim jig and see what comes out and attacks it.
Yeah, a Carolina guy's gonna hit that, and then he's gonna say, "Hey, see the corner of that dock? Pretty sure there's more third piling, 2 inches back. Watch this," and that's what's gonna happen.
Okay. Missouri's got to be jig, no doubt.
Jig and a
Name a
jerkbait.
state that throws a jig and a jerkbait better than the state of Missouri.
That's it. Mike McClellan. There you go.
Yep. Oh, the Hibdons, Browers.
Yeah, right, 100%. Browers, Hibdons.
I
So the Ozarks. Well, I'm just thinking, I was thinking jerkbait and a mixed stick because that's what you have. Yes, the Ozark boys.
If you had to pick one, I'm going jig over jerkbait. That's tandem, but I mean, there's so many guys. Stacey King, but then you got Stacey King with the jerkbait. McClellan with the jerkbait.
Table Rock versus Ozarks, kind
of.
Think about it.
And then obviously out west, you got not no states with the finesse rig. You're talking the gets it, the slider head, the drop shot, the Necco rig, then the swim baits out on the west coast.
Well, I would say the West Coast to me always been just dynamite with finesse tactic because they have so many deep, clear lakes, but they also have a lot of big fish and the swim bait. I would say West Coast anglers, and this would go to our Japanese friends as well. That's where a lot of the innovation comes from. 100%. This is all this cutting edge stuff we're talking about. Hey, most of it probably starts there. Not all, but a lot of it does.
You know where I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that's developing is up north, especially as more and more guys, the St. Lawrence is like the Yankee Stadium now. Like you have to make a pass on that regardless of what circuit you're on. Yes. You're seeing a change, especially on like Oneida with the innovation of the gobies and big tournaments there with pressure. There's a lot of because I'm fishing it now in the opens. There's a lot of cool little innovations going on up there. It's no longer drag a tube like it was 15, 20 years ago. I mean, you look at the spy baits and the hair jig and the tungsten jigs and the jerk, like there's a bunch of little tricks that are going on up north too.
Yeah, 100%. And the gobies is just a game changer up there, and the smallmouth are huge now because of that. It's really impressive because when early on in my fishing career, the gobies had not really established yet, and a 4-pound smallmouth was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I fished St. Clair in a FLW, I think in like 99 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I got second big bass one day with a 4.5. Mickey Bruce beat me with like a 4.7.
Wow.
And that was a huge smallmouth. And now, 4-pounder is like, oh, hey, nice one.
Yeah.
I just keep waiting for the largemouth up there to figure out how to eat a goby. I'm like, come on, largemouth.
Oh, that would be weird.
What's the deal? I mean,
I wonder why they haven't ventured out there.
It used to be up north. Smallmouth were pretty common, easy to catch. That's not where your weight came from. If you could figure out the largemouth, you'd win the tournament up there, including on the St. Lawrence River. Look at Rick Lilligard.
Ish, John Murray, they both top 20 up there most recently, and they had like mid-20s bags of largemouth, and they didn't even sniff the win.
Yeah, and so I mean, I tried it up there many times to my demise. I mean, you are not even in the same universe as the people fishing for smallmouth up there. It's really cool though. See that.
Okay, here's a weird one where I don't think there's a state that owns the title. Frog fishing. Look at like the lanes in Florida, Ish, Bobby Barrick, those guys out west. You got Rojas and throw Rambanis. He's a West Coast guy. You got Rojas in Arizona. You got guys Wisconsin and I mean, the frog guys. There's obviously areas where it's more productive just because there's more vegetation there. But is there like a mecca for frog guys, or is it pretty? Even though it's such a normal lure, it seems like it's pretty diverse across the country of guys with confidence in it.
If there was a mecca, and I don't know if it's much the same anymore because I know the vegetation has changed somewhat, but that would be the California Delta.
Yep.
That would be frog heaven. And you look at Ish and all the guys out there, that's where that's
the Bobby Barrick, Ish, those guys.
Yes, 100%. Those
For
guys
even
kick.
Fred start. Yeah. Okay. I could see. But there's but Florida, dude. I mean, there's a bunch of guys out of Florida.
Yeah. It's a big frog. I mean, it seems to Florida is more. I mean, they bite a frog, but that's more of like the buzz frog area for some reason. Not that a frog doesn't work, but like it does out there. But the historical thing that I think is so awesome. This is what really helped the frog go. And it wasn't just the Delta, but I just heard so many stories back in the day on the Delta when everything was right and perfect at these guys catching these huge fish, like 14 pounders on a frog. I mean, having a bite like that every day, having a fish over 10 hit their frog every day when they were on them. I'm like, I want to go there. And I don't know if it's quite as good as it used to be like that. I don't think it is, but again, hopefully it cycles and they'll have that greatness again that they did, because I mean, it's just historic. That was like the OH Ivy back then.
Yeah.
Was the California Delta.
We mentioned the two types of guys who throw the swim jigs. You're talking the dock skippers, mainly non-vegetation guys that are talking shad up around underneath floats, very precise, versus the guys who are just chucking it in the water willow or the grass edges, giving it the Alabama shake on the way back. I think that there's two categories of froggers too. There's the mat and heavy vegetation froggers who are popping it, thing comes through, very visual bite. And then there's the, I don't want to call them finesse froggers, but like the Rojas type that they're putting it around bush. If there's a mat there, they're like not throwing a frog on it. Like they're throwing it around the edges. They're throwing it non-traditional. And I think there's two very different frog camps, just like there are two very different swim jig camps.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's some that like, like Dean and, some, I mean, I've seen
Fred.
Chris Lane.
Chris Lane, Fred.
They'll skip frogs underneath docks.
Yep.
And up underneath overhanging bushes, and they excel at that. And then, the whole deal is how they, it's how they tune their frogs, and they can basically make them walk the dog and not even move. And they're just trying to get that bass to come out and eat it. And hey, I've learned by watching that. I've caught some fish on a frog, and I have, I pay attention and see how they do it. It's a great thing when it goes down. Frog fishing is a blast.
All right, one more. We don't want to leave our friends up north out, but I'm sorry. Wisconsin, Minnesota, it's got to be a jig head worm. It's got to be that shaky head jig head worm thing. That's a very unique technique for that part of the country where they're fishing the exposed worm on the jig head. They're getting it caught in the grass. They're pulling it out. They're shaking it out. Like those guys do it better than anyone else.
Yeah, I guess so. That's not my cup of tea. I do know they kill it up there, but I wouldn't leave them out of the frog conversation either.
No, that's what I'm saying. The frog is.
Yeah.
All right, this is what I wanted to leave you on. We talked about all sorts of stuff and bring it back. So Kentucky Lake really sucked for a lot of years. We have had Mark Menendez on talking about the Asian carp. We've had a lot of millions of dollars going towards this Asian carp. It appears it's not. I mean, obviously, we're not seeing the old school weights. I don't know whether that's cyclical. I don't know whether that's just because of the carp, but we're seeing some decent weights come in on Kentucky Lake now. But there's a little twist. We're seeing brown fish now, KJ.
Smallmouth. Very strange.
Like Goodbags is smallmouth. So I think this was his third W, his third Toyota Series win, which is Jake Lawrence. And they had a tournament on Kentucky Lake, a Toyota Series event. I don't know. I'm going to tell the story anyway. My buddy Bart, Adam Bartuzek, who I'm fishing the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic with. And he's fished some opens and some Toyotas. He's a talented angler. Has not done well at the AAA level. So it's like that one, how you have to have that first one to be like, holy cow, I can compete here. I can hang with this. And then boom, you're off and running. At least for us normal humans, KJ.
Yeah. Yeah. I had mine. I mean, my first year on the it was the top 150. Then I had my first win, and that really, yeah, that's a game breaker situation.
Yeah. So he calls me during practice for this, and he's like, dude, he goes, it's kind of scary good. I'm like, how good? And he's like really good. And they're all smallmouth, and they're doing exactly what I was hoped they do and what I'm comfortable with. I'm like, he's like, I think I can do like 18 to 20 a day. He gets all his stuff. I'm like, wow. But, it's Kentucky Lake. They can use an umbrella rig, all the locals in it. He's not from there. He's from up north. Well, it turns out both first and second. Adam finished second. Bartuszek finished second in this thing, went like 17, 19, 19. It took like 19 a day to it took like 19 a day to win this thing with Jake Lawrence, and they both did it the same way. 360 and live scoping, spawning smallmouth on giant flats, and then picking off the individual smallmouth.
That's crazy. That is crazy. I've heard of some stuff like that go down, but that's not in my game yet with those electronics either. That's just a different level.
Yeah, let me see what it says here. He goes, this lake is so big that I hardly ever make it up this fall. I was catching spawning fish or fish that were staging before and after they spawned. They were in the same areas. I could tell on live scope if the bass were spawning based on how they acted. They'd hang around if they were on a bed.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So he was catching them off of the beds. Most of them were in the 4 to 7 foot range with flatter banks. He did catch one big largemouth, but Bartuszek, Adam said, he goes, I'm not a local and came down thinking this would be a largemouth thing. I heard there were some smallies down here during practice. I went out, started idling around and saw beds. I caught a few big ones and said, this is all I'm going to do. Being from Minnesota, I love catching smallmouth. Fishing the same pattern as Lawrence, Bartuszek utilized his Humminbird electronics to locate bedding fish and then pick them off with a custom poured mini tube and a Ned rig.
Wow.
This is one of the best. This is what he quotes. This is one of the best smallmouth fisheries that I've ever been to. This is a dude who lives in the Metroplex in Minneapolis. It was honestly pretty incredible how many fish I was catching, 50 to 60 a day. My thumbs were hurting so bad from catching so many. This place is unreal for smallmouth now, and I'm sure the largemouth will be rebounding soon. He had 55-15 in 15 fish. Jake Lawrence had 57.5. Did you ever think you'd hear an April tournament on Kentucky Lake one like that, first and second place?
Never. And that's just crazy. So my next question is, what kind of flats were they? Were they sand flats, pea gravel flats? I don't know, because I'm thinking, how would I look into that pattern and add that to the arsenal? But that's very impressive, very cool, and that's one thing I love about the sport of fishing. There's always something like that happening somewhere, somehow. Somebody does something extraordinary, and we get to see it, and it's just like, wow, that is just continue marching down the field. How you can catch them, it's great.
You want to pick a heavy hitters winner before we wrap this up, KJ? Now, I have not looked today. I have heard I've heard that there's been a 9+ caught. But I'll let you make your pick without me telling you who that was.
Well, I'm not going to make a pick because it's going to be so dynamic because you're just trying to get to the finals now. But
just pick someone who catches the biggest bass out of the whole week.
Chris Lang.
Okay. There we go. Guys, head over and watch that. That is going on for the next 4 or 5 days. Heavy hitters there, and I think you got $100,000 fish in it, and a $50,000 fish, and a $25,000 fish, and then also an overall winner.
Yep. It's gonna be fabulous to watch. I am. It hurts me not being there, but I'm gonna go crappie fishing with a buddy of mine this afternoon, so I guess I'll feel better doing that. But
I like it. Anything you want to get in here, KJ, before we wrap the show up and I let you go? I really have enjoyed our conversation today.
Hey, thanks. It's always great talking to you, Matt. And I've really loved the fishing in the state of Oklahoma. To all the Okies in there watching, it's next door to Texas. Fishing's fabulous, and winning on Eufaula was just it was just awesome, and it almost felt like I was home because it's only 3.5 hours from my house. And just thank for all the people that keep up with Bass Talk Live and watch all this stuff and appreciate y'all watching. And hey, man, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. Good luck fishing, everybody out there.
I hear you. All right, thanks, KJ. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
All right, that was the one and only Kelly Jordon. Great to see him back in the winner's circle. Like I said, his last win would have been the 2014 MLF Cup, but did his homework, got the win in Oklahoma, and a vast knowledge of of the sport of bass fishing and one of the good guys in the industry. Look, we got a lot of stuff going on the rest of the week. I'm still working on filling out the schedule for tomorrow. And the next day we got all the Elite Series guys practicing, half of the MLF guys at heavy hitters. NPFL just wrapped up. We will have a couple shows with Frank, and then I leave on Thursday for the next Bassmaster Open in Virginia, Bugs Island or Kerr, depending on where you want to call it. There's a lot of old school footage of that, like 1990s, early 2000s when Bass used to go there. I've had a blast watching that stuff. But man, we're in the thick of things for the year. Like I said, I'm gonna give a big shout out to Kelly Jordon for jumping on, and it's amazing how cyclical different things are. But it's also interesting to see how the new techniques, the innovation, both electronics and bait wise, how much of an impact that will have now with the instant. There is really no keeping it under the hat, especially if you're top 5 and top 10 in tournaments with it. Like, he was able to keep that spoon under his hat for a number of years back before all the lives. So, all right, folks, this has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow. See ya.